Extreme ownership. Overview of the concept of extreme ownership and how it plays out, again, in a construction setting, whether I'm an executive or a crew leader or a laborer.
Extreme ownership is the concept that you're not going to blame anyone else or anything else when something goes wrong. You're going to take ownership of that problem and you're going to get it solved. That's what extreme ownership is. And this has a massive impact in any organization if they have this attitude. And it has a massive impact in any organization if they don't have this attitude. It's the people that say, oh, it wasn't my fault. Oh, that's not my job. Oh, Aaron was supposed to order supplies. He didn't get it done. That's why we're behind. Like those are the people and those are the teams that fall apart. When you have someone and you have a team and an organization where they say, hey, supplies didn't get ordered. You know what? I don't think I gave Aaron a good enough heads up on what we're going to need and when we're going to need it. Hey, Aaron, next time I want to get with you beforehand, make sure you understand exactly what it is we're getting done, because I know it's going to take a long time for this material to get here. So I want to sit with you before the project starts so we're aligned. So instead of me just pointing the finger at you because the supplies didn't show up, that doesn't help. That doesn't solve anything. Instead, I take ownership of the problem. Look, it might have been your job to order the supplies, but guess what? I'm the one that's supposed to let you know when the supplies are needed, what supplies are needed, and make sure that I get this schedule straightened out. So if I take ownership, I will get that problem solved. And by the way, when I say, hey, Aaron, the materials didn't show up on time, you didn't order them early enough, what's your natural reaction going to be? What is it?
I'm going to get defensive.
You're going to get defensive. And you're going to point your finger back at me, or you're going to point your finger at the supply chain or whatever. And now no one's solving the problem. But when I take ownership and I say, hey, Aaron, look, I didn't give you a heads up. I didn't understand the lead time it was going to take. I want to sit with you, make sure you understand exactly what we need and when we need it, so that way we get materials here on time. That's on me, but I want to get it solved. Now, your guard is down. You're not getting defensive. Instead, you look at me and say, hey, Jocko, you know what? I understand the supply chain better than you. If I would have asked you 2 or 3 questions about when you actually needed it, I could have ordered this stuff earlier. That's on me. Now we have both of us solving the problem. Now we're both taking ownership of that problem, and this is how problems get fixed. So the idea of extreme ownership is so powerful inside an organization, because what happens is people on the team, they take ownership of problems, the problems get solved. That's what happens, as opposed to blame game, and it's not my fault. In which case, we just point fingers, nothing ever changes.
You talk about the dichotomy of extreme ownership, though, and why you had to write about, what if everything is so extreme? Can it go too far?
Yeah, can you go too far with extreme ownership? You can go too far with anything. Yeah. I mean, let's face it, you can go too far with anything. You take anything that's good and you take it to an extreme, and it can become horrible. I mean, whether we're talking about hamburgers and French fries, right? Hamburgers and French fries are good. If you eat them 3 meals a day, they're going to make you unhealthy and sick, and you won't even want to eat them anymore. So you can take, and extreme ownership is an extremely positive characteristic for an organization or for an individual. But if I start to take ownership of everything, if I'm the guy in charge and I say, hey, Aaron, this part, here's how we're going to do this part of the project. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to get it done. Well, it's what I was just talking about, right? It's like, now I'm not giving any ownership to you. So it's all me, because extreme ownership, I'm going to tell you exactly, I'm going to micromanage you. So extreme ownership can easily turn into micromanagement, which is not what we want. We want decentralized command. Decentralized command is the opposite of micromanagement. Micromanagement, I'm trying to do everything myself and no one's making a move unless I tell them to do it. That's not a way to run a business. So extreme ownership can turn into micromanagement if we're not careful. So yes, there's a dichotomy with every characteristic that we have as humans, and every leadership principle also there's a dichotomy. If you go to cover and move, right? Cover and move. I'm supposed to support you. I'm supposed to help you. Well, if I start to focus on you so much that I'm not paying attention to my own team, that's bad. Or if I start saying, hey, Aaron, why don't I do that? Why don't I do this? Well, then I'm stepping on your toes. And now you're mad that I'm infringing on your part of the job. Or simple, hey, we gotta have a simple plan. So I say, hey, we're gonna show up and we're gonna work. That's a simple plan, right? But it obviously doesn't cover what's going to happen during the day. So the plan can be too simple. Prioritize and execute. What happens if we look at one priority and everyone focuses on that? That's called target fixation. We actually have a name for that in the military. Target fixation. I'm only looking at one thing, and next thing you know, we get hit from another angle. So decentralized command, same thing. We don't want to micromanage. But what if I'm so far detached that you don't even know what the priority is? You don't even know what the mission is. That's not good. So decentralized command has to be balanced. I have to make sure I'm engaged enough with the team so that they actually know what the mission is, what we're doing, what the parameters are, why they're doing what they're doing. So if you take anything to an extreme, it can become bad, including extreme ownership, which is the name of the first book that we wrote. And that's one of the reasons we had to write The Dichotomy of Leadership, to show that there's a balance, to show that, hey, if you do anything, even though we called the book Extreme Ownership, I'm sorry. Extreme ownership as a mentality about not making excuses is outstanding. Extreme ownership as a mentality of not blaming other people is perfect. It's perfect. And I'll tell you, I get a lot of those challenges. Well, what if the frontline guy, wasn't wearing his PPE and that's why he got hurt? That can't be my fault. I got 1,000 people on this job. I got one guy on the front line that he wasn't wearing his PPE and now that's why he got hurt. That's not my fault. That's his fault. Okay, so what are you going to change? What are you going to change? Oh, I'm not going to change anything because that was his fault, not mine. Okay, so now, is this going to happen again? Probably, because you're not taking any ownership of it. So if I'm the project manager with 1,000 people on this job site and we have a guy on the front line that's not wearing his PPE and he gets hurt, and I say, you know what, it's my fault. Why is it my fault? Well, I obviously didn't train him. I didn't explain to him why the PPE was important. I didn't have managers or frontline leaders checking and make sure that people were following the procedures. Maybe I didn't review my procedures closely enough to make sure that guys weren't going to get hurt. So here are some changes that I'm going to make. We're going to review our safety procedures. We're going to make sure that people understand why it's important. We're going to make sure frontline managers are checking in on the troops. And we're also going to do a better assessment of the team, make sure they understand why it's important to stay safe. Now, does that mean you're never going to have a safety incident again? No. But have you improved your chances of not having a safety incident? Yes, you have. That starts with taking ownership. So from that perspective, taking extreme ownership is perfect. But can you go too far with it? Yes, you can. You can go too far with anything.
That actually just happened. Some guy died not wearing a seatbelt. The conclusion was he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
There wasn't a single broken window or anything. The truck was totally fine.
Yeah, that's horrible. I hate hearing that. And again, it's very easy to say, "Yep, it was that guy's fault." But if we think a little bit harder about it as a leader, what are we doing? What are we doing to make sure? I was working in an area of construction and actually it was the gas oil industry, and there had been over 60 deaths in a year, and a lot of them were motor vehicle because there's a lot of traffic. But what are we doing about that? And if you just shrug your shoulders and say, "Yep, well, people got to wear their seatbelts," if that's the only move you make, you're not doing enough. You need to actually ask yourself, okay, what can we do to move this forward? What kind of awareness can we give to guys? Even just telling that story. Hey, listen, everyone, we just lost a guy who has a family, who has bills to pay, who has a kid or kids or whatever. We just lost an individual who died in a car accident and not a window was broken in the vehicle. And he's dead because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. And we need to tell everybody in this organization, like, why would you not do that? Instead of just shrugging your shoulder and saying, yeah, he should have worn a seatbelt. When you're in a leadership position, the people that work for you, they're counting on you to lead in tough situations. So That's an example. It's a great example. It's an unfortunate example. I hate hearing stuff like that. I hate hearing stuff like that, especially from a leadership perspective. Because if I'm in a leadership position and I lose a guy because he's not wearing a seatbelt, I know there's more I could have done. I know there's more I could have done to educate and convince my frontline team so that they understand why they're doing what they're doing.
I'll see too, something like that will happen. They'll share it internally, but they'll be very careful for it not to get out because they don't want the company to look bad. They don't want the company to look like they're working unsafe. They don't want it to hurt their reputation. Yeah. So they withhold that information, which could potentially help other people.
Yeah, and if you think about the optics of that, imagine if you went hard in the other direction as a company and you said, hey, listen, we know we got competitors out there. We know that this is a competitive industry, but here's a mistake that we made and we want everybody to know because even though we care about our business and we want to do well, we also care about this industry and the people that do this job. And here's a mistake that we made and here's what we're doing to fix it. And we hope you all get, I mean, think about the optics of that. So although I understand we want to protect our reputation, what better way to protect your reputation than trying to help other human beings be safe?